We will now interrupt your regularly scheduled programming for this Good Old Blades micro podcast.
Knife season for the year is upon us when it comes to shows. And I was doing some research to see if some of my ideas about knife show etiquette aligned with, I guess, the greater populace of published work. And I noticed that there was quite a few websites and references that talk about blade etiquette, and I thought that I would just provide our own take at the Good Old Blades podcast for y'all. Some of these items come from Spartan Blades and A.G. Russell and Blade Magazine, and I couldn't agree more, and let me give some context in it. The first one is get permission to handle a knife. I can't tell you enough how much risk a knife maker takes on by presenting their knives at a show. And for you to cut yourself or contaminate it with your blood or get to a point where you're injured, all of those things spell disaster for the knife maker. It doesn't matter whether they carry liability insurance or what, it just it equals bad things. Typically, you'll have to buy the blade if you get cut. Because there's no way to sanitize it against the things that are in your blood, and if you get cut, you buy it. However, it's just it's real poor form to handle a blade poorly, and also do that without the permission of the knife maker. Typically, these blades that are on tables are razor sharp, and not everybody should just be picking them up and messing with them because they are the wares of the knife maker. I generally don't experience people coming up and just pawing on knives without my permission. So I've always been delightfully surprised at that. Most everybody is actually, I would say, apprehensive to pick up blades. And, as long as you do it safely, I want you to pick up my work and to look at it in the light and inspect it and see how it feels and everything. That's one of the great prides of being able to exhibit my own work and, knife makers in general. So, just make sure that you ask permission, but just be prepared to pick up knives, because even if you're just looking for inspiration or for general ideas about what certain types of custom knives look like, there's no better experience than the tactile one of being able to pick up, feel, and look at knives. So just make sure that you have permission on that. I often find that this is a problem where the advice that I give is wait your turn. There are oftentimes multiple people at any given table, and whether they're just window shopping or actually serious about purchasing something, there's a queue, and there is a first come, first serve type of approach typically to every knife maker. And unfortunately for you, if you show up late, you still have to wait your turn. And you just be respectful of other patrons who are coming to a table, because, the knife maker doesn't typically show favoritism at shows. Usually, knife makers have a first come, first serve type of approach to their knives. And if there's multiple people in line, you kind of just got to wait. And just don't make it awkward, because the knife maker, really honestly, that's usually the issue is they don't want to get into any confrontations because people are fighting over who got in line first and whatnot. So, help a fellow knife maker out and just wait your turn. Another common problem, especially in very popular shows or high traffic areas, is move or get out of the way. If you are not talking to a knife maker, if you're not actively at their table, looking at their wares and everything, then you are occupying space at something that they've spent a lot of money to rent from the knife show, and a lot of time to prepare for. So I honestly, this is one that kind of grinds my gears a little bit at times, because I've spent $500-$600 for a table, thousands of dollars preparing for a knife show, and people will sit and talk to other show goers in front of my table and scare off other customers. And there's not a situation where my table or those tables around are meeting places for other patrons. Just move on, get out of the way, go to one of the aisles where it's not in front of anybody's table, because at the end of the day, just respect the fact that I'm there to do business. Now, if you want to talk, that's fine. No need to get out of the way, because you're at home in front of my table if you want to talk. However, again, it's a common courtesy that if you are not actively transacting or looking at works or things like that, it's not chum around or talk to your fellow buddy or whatever. It's get out of the way, move through the queue, and get to some place that's respectful for all parties for you to sit and talk. Another one is no haggling. Typically, the prices on tables are those for shows, and they're there to sell. And respect the fact that a maker has a lot of time, energy, and other resources tied up in presenting at a knife show. And typically, when they're factoring in all their prices for their table, the sum total is very reasonably priced. So you might find that makers, if they still have knives on their table at the end of the show, they might give you a discount for not wanting to carry extra stuff home. However, don't expect it, and it's a wise idea not to lead with haggling. It's not a flea market, and it's not a yard sale, and it's not a swap meet. It is definitely a place of business, and these ladies and gentlemen have to be able to pay their bills and continue on with their craft. And part of that is also honoring the price that they've set on their table. Another one is be considerate of folders. Now, there are lots of folders that are usually open at tables for you to be able to look at and to feel. And if you want to check the action, that's great. But one thing that I see a lot of people do is open and close knives without consideration that there's a potential that blade could wrap against the spring. There's no consideration for multi-blades and so on and so forth. So, just remember, especially with folders, you have mechanisms that wear out over time. And like turning on a light switch 9 million times dulls, dims, or destroys a light bulb. Actuating a slip joint is also going to wear it out, even if only marginally. And you are, decreasing the operability of that knife every time you actuate it. And if you're not going to buy it, then just be very, very careful. Like again, with slip joints, especially multi-blades, like don't open more than one blade at a time. It might look cool, but if it's not yours, don't do that. If you're not going to buy it, don't do that, because anytime you open up multiple blades at the same time, it puts a lot of strain on that spring, and it could inadvertently damage it. And another thing is that in a lot of cases with multi-blade slip joints, you have certain clearances that are allowed for in the configuration of the blades, and you can't open more than one at a time without potentially wrapping it against another blade. That can cause scratches, it can cause dings in the edge, so on and so forth. So just make sure that you're following good etiquette. Instead of just slapping down a blade inside of a slip joint, ease it down into it if you're not specifically checking the walk and talk. And it's always good to talk to the knife maker about what it is that you're allowed to do, and get permission for those individual actions. And if it's tolerable and everything, then they'll give you permission. The same goes with like liner locks or frame locks. If you're going to open a blade, I have seen it several times where customers will come up and they'll slap open a liner lock or a frame lock, and sometimes the knife goes flying. And at a show especially, it is very dangerous. I mean, it could stab into somebody else, it could break it, and you're not talking about usually low dollar knives at knife shows. So just be careful, be considerate, and make sure that, especially when you're handling some type of knife that has an action, don't just abuse it when you're trying to look at it. Respect the knife and respect the maker's work. Handling knives and handing them off safely to others is important. There's a proper handling method. Making sure that the tip is handed over properly. You always make sure that the blade and the tip are the danger pokey points, right? And other than just making sure that you don't drop the knife, make sure that it's pointed in a safe direction. Make sure that if you're handing it off to the maker or to a friend to look at it as well, that you always keep in mind that the blade and that the point of the blade are in a safe direction, and they're not going to cut you. They're not going to cut your buddies. They're not going to cut the maker, and it's not going to fall and cut something. So just be very careful of how you're handing things off. And that's a point. The next point is really just watch the tip, because it's very easy to lose concentration when you're looking at something that you admire, or maybe you get a little bit starry-eyed on something. And I've had customers almost stab me before. It's not pleasant, and I get a little bit defensive, not in an attitude sense, but in a general safety defense situation. You have to be careful with who you're swinging knives around with, and just make sure that you don't stab anybody. So watch the tip of the knife, watch the blade, hand it off appropriately, and just make sure that you always understand it as a sharp object, and that lots of people could get hurt. Another recommendation is, as a maker who facilitates customers' happiness, right? You come to me, you want to talk blades, that's great. You want to be friends and cordial and talk about the craft and everything, that's great. But one thing that's very difficult for me is if you are talking about a blade and you spend a decent amount of time doing more than window shopping, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to look around and I'll be back. Well, in my earlier days in knife shows, I might actually hold that blade back because of the proposition that somebody who I've actually spent some time getting to understand and talking to about a blade was interested in a knife enough where they said they were going to be back. It benefits nobody to lie to save face. Just say, well, that's great. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a good show. I mean, you can be honest. If you have remorse over the idea of buying the knife before you buy it, I think that works out for all of us as makers. Not because we enjoy missing a sale when we're there to sell knives, but because I don't want you to walk away and not be elated with the knife that you bought from me. I want you to be happy about it. I want you to be proud about it. I want you to have good feelings about the purpose that you put forth in buying the knife. And if you have that before you actually buy it, if you have remorse or you think it's not going to work out or you need time to think about it, instead of telling me that you'll be back, just leave it at that. Say, I really need to think about this, and I appreciate your time, and move on. And that's fine. I guess you would say that I'm a little bit jaded, because if I hear I'll be back, I can pretty much assume that that's just a cordial way of saying, well, thanks, but no thanks, and moving on, even if you spend a decent amount of time with me. So, don't set up false expectations, because a lot of the newer makers might actually believe that you are going to be back, and they might lose out on being able to sell that knife to somebody who wants it more or who will actually commit to it. So just be careful of that. Another one is prices. The same way as you shouldn't be haggling with people, scoffing at price. I've had customers come up to my table and say, "Hey, well, that's overpriced," or that's a ridiculous price, or it's outrageous. And the same has happened online as well. it is pretty rude. I mean, I don't price my knives to gouge anybody. I barely turn a profit on them sometimes. And my time is valuable. The resources that I put in my knives are valuable. The equipment that I have to pay for and run and maintain, and the electricity and all those things are valuable. And the price just is what it is. You're not going to offend me if you keep your comments to yourself about price, or look at it and admire it and then don't buy it. That's perfectly fine. But the price is the price. And that kind of leads into the next advice, and it's keep your comments to yourself if they're negative or judgy. I honestly, it's happened more times than I'd like to admit, but I've had some people come up while other customers are looking at knives and dissuade them from buying it because their personal opinion is that somebody has a better product somewhere else, or you don't want this because of this or that. It's not a quality thing. It's usually just a condescending remark from other people when they're not part of the transaction. And there are people out there that'll do it. Don't be one of them. If you have a particular comment about a blade, its shape, its price, its quality, whatever, those are your opinions. But if somebody's sitting at somebody's table and they're looking at that knife, don't block them from at least sussing out that sale that is not for you to get in the way of. Now, there's another component to knife shows, and that is makers and makers. Now, knife shows are sometimes the only way that we get to actually, meet with each other and to talk and everything. And I would like to say that at the show when it's open is an appropriate time, but it's really not. We're all spending a lot of money to be there and to sell knives and to be there for customers. And there's only so much time at a show that's appropriate to chum with other knife makers when they're trying to conduct business. When you're at your table, your job is to conduct business, and that is forward facing towards your customers. And you might have other knife makers that want to talk and ask you to look at their knives and things like that. And I think that all of those are fine. Like, you as a knife maker, you kind of set that tone. But knife makers, don't just assume that everybody is there to have a hootenanny and to talk about whatever it is that interests you while they're spending hundreds if not thousands of dollars trying to be at a show and sell knives and talk to their customers. It's their business, it's your business, and it needs to be treated with a little bit of respect. However, if there's nobody at my table and you want to come and talk for a little while, please do it. Introduce yourself. Let me know who you are online. Maybe give me a card or things like that. Let's talk, because those things are cool. There's times when you will never get to meet another knife maker in person unless it is at a show. And we need to be able to take those opportunities at shows when there's downtime, or when, after a show is over for the day, or beforehand. Let's be able to meet and share ideas. And especially if you're a newer knife maker, and you want me to look at your work and give you critiques or just inspect things and encourage you and whatnot, feel free to do that. I'll oftentimes walk around shows, and I will spend a little bit of time with knife makers that I follow regularly online, new knife makers, and so on and so forth. And just be there and be present and be encouraging, because all of us need that at times during our knife journeys. Even established makers need to have a little bit of encouragement and camaraderie, especially the knife makers that are quiet and stay to themselves sometimes. But just remember, your desire to meet and chum and converse with knife makers is subordinate to the business of that knife maker. And a lot of us will not tell another knife maker to buzz off. because we want to be respectful. But, remember that it's your obligation as the person who's going over and visiting to read the room, to know when other customers are not coming to a table because you're monopolizing it, and to be aware that some customers won't even, they'll go another direction if they think that you're by a table and you're talking and everything. So I know I've seen many collectors, some fairly large, but self-conscious or to themselves collectors, that it gets too stuffy in a room or around a table, and then they have to leave, whether it's social anxiety or what. They might just leave, and that might be a customer that a knife maker. It was like the make or break type of deal that they could have had on the knife show. So you just need to be aware of those things as a maker, and just be respectful. Your job is to help your fellow maker, not to hurt them. So just keep those things in mind. And as we enter into this glorious year of knife shows, everybody stay safe, travel well. And if you happen to be in Blade Show or in Texas at Blade Show Texas this next weekend, let me know on social media, and I'll be able to maybe come and talk to you. Hope this helps.